So usually, when you pick up a book, there is this sort of unspoken contract between you and the author.
Right, yeah, like an expectation.
Exactly. You open it up to page one, and they set the scene for you. They introduce the concepts, maybe the characters, and they guide you step by step through their world. It's linear.
Sure, makes sense. It's dependable.
Right. But I want you to imagine opening a book, and instead of a story or an explanation, you find something that reads more like, I don't know, the raw source code for the universe.
Oh, man.
It doesn't explain itself at all. It just lists commands, variables, and these structural rules, and then it just abruptly stops.
It's totally jarring.
It really is. It feels less like a novel or a textbook and way more like a dangerously incomplete instruction manual for a machine that, frankly, you don't fully understand.
And that absolute disorientation, I mean, that is the defining experience of encountering the text we are doing a deep dive on today.
The Sefer Yetzirah.
Right, the Sefer Yetzirah, which is commonly translated as the Book of Creation.
And welcome to the deep dive, by the way. I'm so excited we're getting into this today.
Oh, me too. I mean, it stands as one of the most mysterious, just heavily debated texts in all of human history.
Absolutely, because as we're going to see from the sources, we're looking at a document that wasn't just studied or, debated by ancient mystics.
No, not at all.
It was purportedly utilized as a functional tool, like to actively alter reality, engineer consciousness, and literally generate life.
Yeah, and to even begin to decode what this text actually is and how it was used, we really need to clear away all the cultural baggage that surrounds the word Kabbalah.
Oh, yeah. The modern perception is completely warped.
It really is. I mean, people hear the word Kabbalah and they immediately picture, like, red string bracelets, right?
Yeah, early 2000s pop culture trends. Madonna.
Exactly. Or on the flip side, they picture these incredibly dense, purely philosophical charts that take a lifetime to read.
Right, but looking at the sources we have, Kabbalah is far from a monolith. It's actually divided into three very distinct branches.
And honestly, the failure to distinguish between those branches is where almost all the confusion starts.
So let's lay it out for the listener. What is the first branch?
So the first branch is what the sources categorize as theoretical Kabbalah.
Okay, theoretical.
Yeah, and this is the realm of pure spiritual dynamics. It maps out the metaphysical structure of existence.
Like the blueprint of the heavens.
Exactly. It explores things like the Sefer, which are the 10 divine emanations, and it details the complex hierarchies of souls and angels.
So texts like the Zohar would fall into this.
Spot on. The Zohar, which became the central text of the Sefer school in the 16th century, is like the masterwork of this branch. It's highly observational and deeply philosophical.
Got it. So if we look at this through like a modern lens, the theoretical branch basically functions like theoretical physics.
That's a great analogy, actually.
You have these scholars at a chalkboard mapping out the fundamental forces of the cosmos, theorizing about string theory or dark matter.
Right. It's all about understanding the what and the why of the universe from a really macro perspective.
Okay, so what's the second branch?
The second branch is meditative Kabbalah, and this operates on a completely different paradigm.
How so?
Well, rather than just observing the universe, it focuses on internal, neurological and spiritual engineering.
Wow, okay. Engineering the mind.
Yeah. It employs the highly focused permutation of the Hebrew alphabet, the pronunciation of specific divine names, and even rhythmic breathing techniques.
To do what exactly?
To radically alter the practitioner's state of consciousness. It's essentially a rigorous linguistic technology of the mind.
That's fascinating.
And this specific branch, the meditative one, is where the Sefer Yetzirah firmly belongs.
So it's the applied engineering to the theoretical physics we just talked about.
Exactly. But the sources outline a third branch that seems to take that internal engineering and turn it violently outward.
And this is where things get wild.
Right. This brings us to magical Kabbalah.
Okay, magical Kabbalah, this uses the exact same tools, right?
Yes. It utilizes the exact same linguistic permutations and divine names that you find in the meditative practices. But the end goal shifts dramatically.
So it's no longer about just reaching a higher state of awareness.
No. Instead of seeking internal transcendence, the magical branch attempts to impose the practitioner's will upon the physical world.
Like actually changing things outside of themselves.
Right. It uses incantations and drawn signs to alter natural events. A prime example is the book Raziel.
Okay, so this is where intense meditation crosses the threshold into what outwardly appears to be like telekinesis or sympathetic magic.
Exactly. And the friction between those branches is just fascinating because The Sefer Yetzirah seems to constantly blur that boundary between internal meditation and external magic.
It really does. I mean, the commentaries we were pulling from today, they detail applications that straight up sound like science fiction.
Oh, completely.
We're talking telepathy, biological mutation, and the literal assembly of conscious androids.
It's mind-boggling stuff.
It is. But, before we get into the actual mechanics of how the ancients supposedly did all that, we have to talk about the physical reality of the book itself, because it demands scrutiny.
It really does. It's so weird.
Right. When I hear the phrase ancient mystical tome, I immediately picture this massive, dusty, leather-bound encyclopedia of secrets. Like something that takes decades just to translate.
Yeah, you need to throw that image out entirely.
Completely out the window.
The Sefer Yetzirah defies every expectation you might have of a foundational text. It is defined by an extreme, almost violent brevity.
Violent brevity is a good way to put it. How short is it?
Well, the version known to scholars as the short version contains roughly 1,300 words.
Wait, 1,300 words. That is the length of a Sunday newspaper editorial.
I know, and the long version barely stretches to 1,800 words.
That's still nothing.
Right, but the truly staggering detail emerges when philologists and historians isolate the earliest strata of the text.
The core of it.
Yes. They estimate that the original source material, the core phonetic and mathematical system, consisted of a mere 240 words.
240 words.
Yeah.
I mean, that isn't a book. That is a memo.
It's practically a long tweet.
Seriously. You could fit the entire purported blueprint for the creation of reality on a single sheet of parchment.
Easily. And that hyper-compressed format really explains why reading it feels so fragmented today.
Because it doesn't explain anything.
Exactly. The text doesn't attempt to persuade the reader. It doesn't offer any substantiation for its massive claims. It just reads as this dogmatic, sonorous, blank verse.
And it introduces these world-shattering architectural concepts of the universe, and then just abandons them entirely in the next stanza.
Yes. The structural drops are so jarring.
Like in chapter 1.
Yeah.
It introduces this colossal concept of the, quote, 10 Sephiro of nothingness.
Right, it dedicates intense focus to them, framing them as the structural pillars of all existence.
And then the word Sephiro simply vanishes. It is literally never mentioned again in any of the subsequent chapters.
It's wild, and chapter 2 repeats that exact same pattern.
What happens in chapter 2?
It introduces a highly complex linguistic system involving 5 distinct phonetic families. It groups the Hebrew letters by how they are articulated in the throat, palate, tongue, teeth, and lips.
Okay, so very detailed phonetic system.
Right, and then it introduces the mathematical concept of the 231 gates.
The 231 gates.
Yeah, which involves pairing every single letter of the alphabet with every other letter to create a web of root sounds.
These are massive mechanical systems for altering reality.
Huge. Yet, neither the phonetic families nor the 231 gates ever reappear in the text after that.
See, from a purely editorial standpoint, that looks like a botched assembly job.
Oh, for sure.
If someone hands me a manual that introduces the most important tool for the engine in step 1, and then never mentions it again while telling me how to build the car,
You're going to be confused.
I have to assume pages are missing. Or like someone hastily stapled 3 different pamphlets together. It feels fundamentally broken.
And, modern historians often arrive at that exact conclusion. They view it as a clumsy, disorganized compilation of different texts.
Which makes sense on the surface.
It does. But that purely academic view ignores the intense, secretive culture of the ancient Talmudic academies.
Okay, so what are we missing?
To understand the structure of the Sefer Yetzirah, we have to examine the concept of Megillat Seterim.
Megillat Seterim. Which translates to what? Hidden scroll.
Yes, hidden scrolls.
That sounds incredibly theatrical, like Indiana Jones stuff.
It does, but the sources actually frame it as a very mundane, practical tool for ancient scholars.
Okay, how so?
It was an academic necessity born out of strict theological law. In the ancient academies, the transmission of esoteric knowledge was fiercely guarded as an oral tradition.
So they weren't allowed to write it down.
Exactly. Even foundational legal texts like the Mishnah prior to its redaction couldn't be written down. Writing these teachings for public consumption was explicitly forbidden because the living, breathing transmission from a master to a disciple was the only sanctioned method. It ensured that the nuance, the tone, and the context weren't lost or corrupted by uninitiated readers.
That makes sense. But you're relying entirely on human memory. And human memory, even among geniuses, is fundamentally flawed.
Which is exactly why the masters compromise.
Ah, the hidden scrolls.
Right. The heads of these academies would maintain private, heavily abbreviated notes. These personal ledgers served as a memory aid to ensure the precise wording of the traditions remained intact over the years.
But they were kept secret.
Totally secret. These scrolls were never bound, never published, and never meant for the public eye. They were hidden scrolls.
Okay, so the implication here is that the Sefer Yetzirah was never authored to be a cohesive book in the first place.
Exactly. It was essentially the private bullet point notes of a master mystic.
Oh, that framework perfectly explains the disjointed architecture we were just complaining about.
Right. The Sefer Yetzirah never received a formal, clean redaction like the Mishnah did.
So imagine a master holding that original 240-word core text.
Right. And over a lifetime of teaching it in secret, he jots down marginal notes to elaborate on a difficult concept for his disciples.
Like, oh, let me explain the 231 gates real quick in the margin.
Yes. And his successors inherit that scroll, and they add their own marginalia.
And a century later, a copyist tries to duplicate the scroll, sees the margins completely filled with text, and weaves those private notes directly into the main body.
Exactly. The layers just fuse together.
So you aren't reading a linear book. You're reading centuries of secret marginalia stacked haphazardly on top of a tiny ancient core.
That's the perfect way to describe it. A concept like the 231 gates might have just been an elaborate marginal note clarifying a single line about permutations, which a later scribe accidentally cemented into the text itself as its own chapter.
That is wild. But if we are dealing with a layered compilation of private academic notes, tracing the lineage backward to find the original author becomes a total forensic nightmare.
Oh, it's incredibly difficult. We have to peel back the historical strata layer by layer.
So where do we even start?
The most reliable starting point is the era of the Talmudic masters, specifically around 204 CE.
This is during the redaction of the Mishnah, right? By Rabbi Yehuda the Prince.
Yes, known simply as Rebbe. The textual evidence points heavily to Rebbe possessing an intimate understanding of the Sefer Yetzirah's mechanics.
Because the Mishnah itself lays out severe restrictions on this specific knowledge.
It absolutely does. It warns that the mysteries of creation, Masa Bereshit, cannot be expounded in the presence of two disciples.
Meaning you can only teach it one-on-one.
Right. And the mysteries of the chariot Masa Markava cannot be taught even to one disciple unless he is exceedingly wise and can deduce the concepts independently.
Let's clarify the distinction between those terms because it's vital for the listener.
Good call. So Masa Markava, the chariot, refers to the introspective, transcendent, meditative practices meant to elevate the soul into higher realms.
So that's the internal journey.
Yes. But Masa Bereshit, the mysteries of creation, is the term ancient authorities universally use to describe the applied linguistic mechanics found in the Sefer Yetzirah.
The applied engineering we talked about earlier.
Exactly. And the fact that the foundational legal text of Judaism, around 200 CE, places an extreme quarantine on this material.
I mean, that proves how established and potent it was already considered to be.
Exactly. If Rebbe is setting up legal guardrails around it in 200 CE, the actual development of the text must go back to previous generations.
So who was before him?
It points directly to Rabbi Akiba.
Okay, a towering figure. He lived from roughly 12 to 132 CE.
Right, and multiple traditions credit Akiba with the formalization of the Sefer Yetzirah.
The Talmud emphasizes Akiba's unparalleled mastery of the mystical realm, doesn't it?
It does. He was renowned for extracting monumental legal and esoteric teachings merely from the crowns, the tagin.
The tagin. Those are the small decorative flourishes on top of the Hebrew letters in a Torah scroll.
Yes, and think about that. An obsession with the structural anatomy of the alphabet aligns perfectly with a text that claims the letters themselves are the building blocks of matter.
It's a perfect match. But did Akiba actually author that 240-word core?
He likely authored the oral formulation of it.
The first Mishnah concept.
Yes. Masters of that era didn't just teach general concepts. They provided a highly specific phonetic string of words that their disciples were required to memorize flawlessly.
Word for word.
Right. So Akiba likely engineered the exact linguistic formulation of the 240-word core for precise oral transmission.
But the philosophical roots of a universe built on math and an alphabet must predate a first-century rabbi. I mean, where does Akiba's lineage come from?
If you follow the Talmudic lineage, it traces Akiba's mystical education back to Rabbi Nehunia ben Hakana.
Okay.
And the tradition explicitly states Nehunia received this knowledge from a highly obscure figure named Menachem the Essene.
Wait, the Essenes? That introduces a wild variable into this history.
It really does.
For you listening, the Essenes were an ascetic, deeply isolated Jewish sect operating during the Second Temple period. The community at Qumran, the ones responsible for the Dead Sea Scrolls, is the most famous example.
Right. They separated themselves from mainstream society almost entirely.
So how does Menachem fit in?
Well, Menachem was a prominent Essene who, according to tradition, served as the vice president of the Sanhedrin, the high court under Hillel.
Oh, wow, so he was a major public figure.
He was, but then he resigned and took his esoteric knowledge back into the shadows with the Essenes.
Fascinating.
And here's the kicker. The Roman Jewish historian Josephus provided extensive observations on the Essenes that mirror the Sefer Yetzirah perfectly.
What did Josephus notice?
He documented their use of angel names, their predictive purifications, and most tellingly, he noted their striking resemblance to the Pythagoreans.
The Pythagoreans. They viewed the universe as a manifestation of pure mathematics.
Exactly. For them, numbers weren't just descriptors, they were the actual substance of reality.
And when you cross-reference that Pythagorean worldview with the Sefer Yetzirah,
it explicitly states the universe was constructed using the 22 letters of the alphabet and the 10 Sephirot, framing them as foundational numerical concepts.
the philosophical alignment is undeniable.
It is. This suggests the Essenes were guarding and practicing the core mechanics of the Sefer Yetzirah deep in the desert long before the rabbis of the Talmud ever formalized it.
Okay, so we've tracked this highly compressed, heavily guarded mental blueprint from the Talmudic academies back to the ascetic Essenes.
Right.
But the final stanza of the Sefer Yetzirah itself completely ignores all of them. It makes an astronomical leap backward.
A huge leap.
It attributes the ultimate mastery and origination of the text to the patriarch Abraham.
Yes. And major 10th century commentators, most notably Sedidia Gan, firmly upheld this attribution. Sedidia stated plainly that, quote, the ancients say that Abraham wrote it.
Okay, if I'm hearing this timeline, alarm bells are going off in my head.
Oh, sure.
Because the earliest physical manuscripts and commentaries emerge around the 10th century CE, and they are attributing this incredibly complex linguistic and astrological system to a figure who supposedly lived in the Bronze Age, thousands of years prior.
Sounds like a stretch.
It sounds like standard religious myth-making. You know, retroactively attaching a famous name to legitimize a much newer text.
And Saadia Gaon actually anticipated that exact skepticism.
Really? How did he justify it?
He clarified that the tradition doesn't claim Abraham literally sat down with a quill and authored the physical book we possess today.
Right, because that makes no sense.
Exactly. Saadia argued logically that if Abraham had written a formal text, it would have been canonized in the Bible.
Okay, fair point. So what is the claim then?
The tradition posits that Abraham originated the principles. He discovered the mathematical and linguistic mechanics of the universe, utilized them, and passed them down as a strictly oral tradition.
Which was only compressed into that first Mishnah by Aki millennia later.
Exactly. And the ancient commentators actually hunt for scriptural evidence to support this, and their interpretations radically change the narrative of Genesis.
Give us an example.
Take Genesis 12, verse 5.
Okay.
The text describes Abraham and Sarah leaving for Canaan, taking with them all their possessions and, quote, the souls that they had made in Haran.
Now, the conventional mainstream reading of that is that they were proselytizing. They, quote-unquote, made souls by converting the local population to monotheism.
Right, but the mystical commentators reject that metaphor completely.
They read it literally.
They absolutely do. They argue that Abraham, operating in tandem with Shem, who was the son of Noah, utilized the meditative mechanics of the Sefer Yetzirah to biologically generate human life.
Wait. They were creating golems.
Yes. They literally made souls. And the text uses the plural they had made because in the mystical framework, creating life requires a balancing of spiritual forces.
Meaning a single individual cannot generate the necessary energetic equilibrium alone. You need a partner. So they're claiming Abraham was literally a bioengineer in the Bronze Age.
That's the claim.
That is wild.
Yeah.
But, you know, a later passage in Genesis actually creates a bridge that connects this Middle Eastern esoteric tradition to the wider ancient world.
Oh, Genesis 25, verse 6.
Yes. It details that before his death, Abraham gave gifts to the children of his concubines and sent them away, quote, to the lands of the East.
And the esoteric sources assert these gifts were not livestock or wealth.
What were they?
He was imparting the mysteries of the Sefer Yetzirah, specifically the knowledge of unclean names.
Unclean names. That sounds ominous.
It's a euphemism for the raw, unprotected mechanics of manipulating physical reality. And he exported this technology east.
The geographical trajectory there is just stunning. Because when you examine the Vedic scriptures of ancient India, which originated around the 18th century BCE,
which is roughly the time of Abraham.
Exactly. You find wildly complex spiritual technologies built entirely on language, vibration, and the concept that the universe is essentially a song sung by the divine.
The parallels are incredible.
The phonetic emphasis of Sanskrit mantras perfectly mirrors the phonetic permutations of the Hebrew letters in the Sefer Yetzirah.
The implication is profound, isn't it? Abraham, positioned as the supreme mystic of antiquity, synthesized the esoteric knowledge of Mesopotamia and Egypt.
And by sending these phonetic and meditative systems east,
the mechanical blueprint found in the Sefer Yetzirah may have fundamentally seeded or heavily influenced the spiritual DNA of Eastern mysticism.
Okay, so we have established the strange, fragmented architecture of the book and its immense historical lineage.
Right.
But a map is useless unless you know how to read it. If this text isn't a theoretical history, how did the ancients actually use it?
The key to its application lies in the grammar.
The grammar.
Yes. Later philosophers read the Sefer Yetzirah in the third person. They read it as he combined or he formed, treating the text as a passive description of how God built the universe.
Okay.
But the earliest meditative practitioners rejected that entirely. They read the text in the imperative mood.
So they read it as a direct command.
Yes. The text wasn't saying he combined, it was commanding the reader. Combine, form, understand with wisdom.
It literally functions as a precise instruction manual for the mind.
Precisely. It dictates exactly how to group the phonetic families, how to pair the letters in the 231 gates, and how to cycle those permutations through your consciousness to generate specific frequencies of reality.
But okay, if I'm just chanting combinations of letters, I still need a mechanism for how that actually alters the physical world.
Right.
And suddenly in chapters 3, 4, and 5, the text pivots from linguistics into this dense astrological almanac.
It does. It constantly cross-references space, the human body, and time, what it calls the universe, soul, and year.
But why inject astrology into a linguistic meditation? That seems disconnected.
Because the mechanics of the Sefer Yetzirah require environmental synchronization.
Environmental synchronization. Break that down for me.
Kabbalistic tradition insists that you cannot generate or direct spiritual power in a vacuum.
Wow.
To effectively manifest changes in reality, the practitioner's mind must perfectly align with the astrological environment and the precise temporal moment.
Because the energetic steed of the universe is constantly rotating.
Yes. If you attempt to permute the letters of creation, you must calculate exactly where the celestial gears are positioned at that specific second.
It's the ultimate form of environmental hacking.
That's a brilliant way to phrase it.
There is actually a story in the Talmud where God tells Abraham to, quote, go out of your astrology.
Yes.
Now, the surface reading of that is just a warning not to trust fortune tellers, right?
Right.
But the mystical reading suggests God is telling Abraham that his mastery of these linguistic mechanics allows him to override the deterministic programming of the stars entirely.
You master the system's rules to transcend the system itself.
Wow.
We see this exact synchronization of the macrocosm and the microcosm detailed in the biblical account of Bezalel.
Okay, Bezalel.
Yeah.
He is the architect chosen to construct the tabernacle in the desert.
The highly specific portable sanctuary that housed the Ark of the Covenant, yes.
And the Talmud poses a very specific question about him. Why was Bezalel chosen?
Right, because he wasn't simply a master carpenter or metallurgist. The text states explicitly that he, quote, knew how to permute the letters with which heaven and earth were created.
So building the tabernacle was more like tuning an impossibly intricate, multi-dimensional musical instrument.
Exactly. Every physical dimension, every specific type of wood, and every fold of fabric had to be cut and positioned to perfectly match the specific mathematical and phonetic frequency of the universe.
It was an architectural microcosm designed to resonate with the macrocosm.
And simply hammering boards together wouldn't achieve that resonance.
No, obviously not.
Yetzirah had to actively employ the Sefer Yetzirah during the physical construction.
So while cutting the wood or shaping the gold, he had to mentally permute the specific phonetic combinations corresponding to that material.
Aligning his mental state with the astrological timing, yes. He He was actively programming the physical matter to hold a higher spiritual density.
Now, the idea of mentally programming matter sounds very abstract.
It does.
But the ancient commentaries recount sages using these exact mechanics to perform undeniable physical feats.
And the accounts are presented with a chilling, clinical detachment. They aren't written like fairy tales.
Give me an example.
Take Rabbi Yehoshua, a first-century master of esoteric arts.
Okay.
The traditions record his claim that by utilizing the Sefer Yetzirah, he could take ordinary squashes and pumpkins and biologically mutate them into beautiful trees.
Wait, pumpkins into trees?
Yes.
So he isn't casting a spell like in Harry Potter. He is mentally isolating the biological code of a pumpkin, permuting the foundational letters that represent its form, and overriding it with the code for a tree.
That is the exact mechanism they believed was occurring. It's biological recoding.
That is terrifying and amazing.
And there is another striking account involving Rav Zira, a 3rd century Babylonian sage.
What did he do?
His mastery of the meditative permutations generated such an intense, energetic field around him that he used a terrifying method to test if his concentration remained pure.
A test.
Once a month, he would place his bare feet directly into a roaring furnace.
What? And as long as he maintained the linguistic permutations in his mind, the fire couldn't touch his biology.
His mental architecture entirely superseded the physical properties of the fire.
That is insane.
And the Talmud notes this practice continued until an incident where the other sages inadvertently distracted him.
Oh no.
His mental permutation broke, the energetic shielding collapsed, and his feet were severely burned. He was permanently starred, actually earning the nickname, the little man with the burned feet.
Wow. So overriding plant biology or shielding tissue from heat, I mean, those are massive manipulations of the physical world.
Oh, absolutely.
But the ultimate test of the Sefer Yetzirah, the final exam for a master to prove they had synchronized entirely with the divine intent, was the synthesis of conscious life.
The creation of the golem.
Right.
It is the most sensitive, fiercely debated application of the entire text. Generating artificial life proved that the practitioner hadn't just learned the mechanical rules of reality, they had mastered its source code.
And the sources provide an incredibly bizarre, almost domestic example of this.
They really do. It's so strange.
The Talmud relays the routine of 2 3rd century sages, Rabbi Hanina and Rabbi Hoshea.
Right.
Every Friday afternoon leading up to the Sabbath, they would engage in the Hilkot Yetzirah, the rules of creation. Through this, they would generate a prime calf and then slaughter and eat it for their Sabbath meal.
And this passage forces the medieval commentators into intense theological corner.
Because what exactly was happening? Were they literally eating mystical veal?
Right. Rationalist philosophers and even major 13th century Kabbalists like Abraham Abulafia totally balked at the idea of physical materialization.
So how did they explain it?
They argued the event was entirely neurological.
Neurological.
Yeah. The sages engaged in a shared, hyper-vivid, meditative permutation. They simulated the sensory experience of creating, slaughtering, and eating a calf so completely that their brains registered the absolute physical and spiritual satiation of a meal.
Without any biological matter actually existing.
Exactly.
So they were bypassing the digestive system entirely and writing the experience of a meal directly into their nervous systems.
It's a profound concept when you think about it.
It really is. But not everyone agreed with that. Right?
No, other heavyweights, like the 13th century authority, the Rashba, demanded a literal interpretation.
He thought there was a physical calf.
Yes, and he focused heavily on the timing of the ritual. Why did they do this exclusively on Friday?
Oh, because according to the Genesis narrative, Friday the 6th day is the exact moment in cosmic time when God originally generated mammalian life.
Exactly.
So they were hacking the astrological timeline.
Yes. They weren't just meditating, they were using the temporal resonance of Friday to ride the cosmic wake of the original creation.
Utilizing that existing environmental energy to physically materialize biological tissue out of thin air.
That alignment of temporal energy and phonetic permutation is the absolute core of the Sefer Yetzirah's mechanics.
That is unbelievable. But synthesizing a calf is child's play compared to synthesizing a human.
Oh, without a doubt. The lore surrounding human golems is steeped in profound theological danger.
Like the story of the prophet Jeremiah.
Yes, that narrative provides a stark warning about attempting this process.
And Jeremiah's attempt to use the Sefer Yetzirah involves one of the most absurd, biologically complex backstories I've ever encountered in an ancient text.
It is incredibly sensitive material in the tradition.
He is warned by divine intuition that he cannot attempt to create life alone, right? The energetic imbalance would destroy him. He needs a partner.
Right. So he eventually partners with his son, Yetzirah.
But the conception of Yetzirah, I mean, it reads like ancient science fiction.
It really does. The narrative claims Jeremiah visited a public bathhouse where he experienced a nocturnal emission in the water. The tradition asserts his biological material remained viable within the heated water. Subsequently, his own daughter utilized the same bath, and through this purely environmental exposure became impregnated.
It is a literal ancient description of accidental environmental artificial insemination.
Yes, which results in a technically incestuous conception, despite the total absence of physical contact or intent.
Now, a cynical historian might look at that narrative and see a wildly elaborate cover story designed to protect the reputation of a prophet's family from a scandalous affair.
And that historical skepticism is entirely valid. But within the internal logic of the esoteric tradition, the bizarre circumstances of his birth mark Yetzirah as a vessel of unique, almost mathematically pure biological potential.
He was originally named Yetzirah, right?
Right, which translates to son of seed. The name was later altered to Yetzirah to shield him from the stigma.
And the linguistic math confirms his lineage, doesn't it?
It does. The Kabbalists calculate the gematria, the numerical value of the Hebrew letters. The name Sirah and the name Jeremiah both calculate to the exact sum of 271.
Wow. It is a mathematical proof embedded in the name itself, confirming his origin without stating it aloud.
Incredibly, centuries later, rabbinic scholars actually utilized this esoteric bathhouse narrative as legitimate legal precedent.
Wait, really? For what?
When debating the modern bioethics of artificial insemination, they cited Yetzirah to argue that conception without a prohibited physical act does not constitute adultery or incest under the law.
The fact that ancient mysticism provides the legal framework for modern fertility clinics is astounding to me.
It bridges the ancient and modern worlds in such a bizarre way.
So, Jeremiah and his mathematically unique son unite their mental architectures. They engage the permutations of the Sefer Yetzirah. What is the result?
The text claims they successfully generated a golem, a living humanoid.
Okay, they actually did it.
However, upon witnessing the reality of their creation, they were struck by the sheer theological terror of their accomplishment.
They realized what they had done.
They recognized the inherent instability and danger of a human wielding divine generative power, and they chose to deconstruct the entity, returning it to dust.
They proved the mechanism worked, but backed away from the consequences.
Exactly. Which sets the stage for the definitive, most clinically analyzed account of a golem in the Talmud.
This centers on Rava, right? A brilliant foundational master of the Babylonian Academy in the 4th century CE.
Yes. Rava famously declared, quote, "If the righteous desired, they could create a world."
He believed the generative power of the text was absolute.
Yes, gated only by the moral perfection of the operator. So Rava puts his theory into practice, and the Talmud delivers the result with breathtaking brevity. It simply says, Rava created a man.
He synthesizes a biological android, and then he dispatches it as a messenger across town to his colleague, Yetzirah.
The same Yetzirah who routinely tested his mental shields in the furnace.
Right, the little man with the burned feet.
The very same.
So Yetzirah observes this artificial man approaching. He engages it in conversation, asking it questions. But the entity is entirely mute.
It cannot produce speech.
And Zira's acute mystical perception immediately recognizes the flaw. He realizes this is not a natural human, it is a biological construct synthesized through the Sefer Yetzirah.
And Yetzirah issues a brutal single command. He says, return to the dust.
And the construct instantly destabilizes and dissolves into earth.
Just like that.
So if Rava possesses the mental architecture to generate a functioning biological body capable of navigating a city, why does the process fail at the vocal cords? Is it a mechanical error in the permutation?
No, it is not a mechanical failure. It is an unavoidable spiritual limitation.
Explain that.
The ancient text known as the Bahir diagnoses the exact nature of the flaw. It explains that speech, the capacity for complex linguistic expression and free will, is the ultimate signature of the divine spark. A golem cannot speak because its creator, Rava, is merely human. And every human, regardless of their righteousness, is fundamentally tethered to the material world and tainted by imperfection.
So you cannot impart a perfection you do not possess.
Precisely. As long as the operator is imperfect, they cannot channel the absolute unblemished generative power of God.
The physical construct might mimic biology perfectly, but it is fundamentally void of the divine soul that animates true consciousness.
And the genius of the Talmudic account is that this theological failure is mathematically proven in the very language used to describe it.
This part blew my mind when I read the sources.
It's incredible. If we break down the original Aramaic phrase, Rava created a man, it exposes the entire mechanism of the Sefer Yetzirah.
So the linguistic architecture here is breathtaking. Let's walk through it.
The Aramaic phrase is Rabba, Bara, Gabi, Are. We have to analyze the atomic structure of those three words.
Okay, the first word, Rava.
It consists of three letters: Resh, Bet, Aleph, RBA.
That is the operator, Rava himself.
Right. The second word, created Bar-O, consists of the exact same three letters, but the order is reversed. Bet, Resh, Aleph, B-R-A.
So this isn't just vocabulary, it demonstrates the core mechanic of the Sefer Yetzirah. Creation is achieved through the mirroring and permutation of foundational letters.
The operator permutes their own essence to generate the action.
Then we reach the third word, man, Ga-B-H-R-A.
It takes the previous sequence, B-R-A, and affixes a single letter to the beginning, a gimel.
And the gimel is the third letter of the alphabet.
Exactly. So mechanically, the operator permutes a sequence, adds a catalyst letter, and materializes a biological form.
But the math of that final phrase reveals the flaw.
Yes. When you calculate the combined numerical value of the entire phrase, Rabba Heya Ga Echare, the sum is exactly 612.
612. But in the Jewish anatomical and spiritual tradition, a complete human being is comprised of exactly 613 components.
Specifically, 248 bones and 365 blood vessels, corresponding to the 613 commandments.
So the math equals 612. But a human is 613.
Right. Rava's creation is literally mathematically missing one.
It lacks the 613th element.
It possesses the biological scaffolding, but it is fundamentally devoid of the final animating spark of the soul.
The narrative is literally a self-proving mathematical equation demonstrating the inescapable limitation of human engineering.
It's just brilliant. And that structural manipulation of language permuting roots to manifest physical reality, it actually echoes the most ubiquitous magical phrase in human history.
Oh, right. The Aramaic incantation.
Exactly. Abracadabra, it translates literally to, I will create as I speak.
It is the distilled essence of the Sefer Yetzirah's philosophy. Language is not a descriptive tool. It is the generative engine of reality itself.
Right.
But this brings us to a massive historical contradiction.
What's that?
If this 240-word mental technology allows operators to mutate biology, shield themselves from physics, and construct biological servants, why isn't it ubiquitous? Why hasn't this technology been ruthlessly exploited, weaponized, or commercialized across the centuries?
Well, because the guardians of this technology executed one of the most sophisticated, prolonged campaigns of deliberate disinformation in recorded history.
They actively hid it.
The true mechanics of the Sefer Yetzirah were actively sabotaged by the very masters who understood them.
The historical arc of this text is staggering when you lay it all out.
It really is an epic journey.
We are tracking a 240-word formula that potentially traces its roots through the ascetic Essenes, back to the phonetic architecture of ancient India and the bioengineering of Abraham.
An instruction manual demanding the mental permutation of language to mutate biology, shield against physics, and construct biological entities.
Which was then subjected to the most successful disinformation campaign in human history.
And, you know, the fundamental paradigm shift the Sefer Yetzirah demands is how we perceive language itself.
What do you mean?
In our modern context, words are mere descriptors. They are labels we apply to existing things. But the Sefer Yetzirah posits that language is the molecular structure of reality.
If you comprehend the phonetic code, you don't describe reality, you recompile it.
Exactly.
As we conclude this deep dive, that concept of recompiling reality through code brings us to a crucial final thought to consider.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're listening to this, I want you to think back to the defining failure of Rava's golem.
The missing element.
Right. The ancient Bahir diagnosed that the construct could not speak, could not achieve true consciousness, because Rava, the creator, was a flawed human being.
The creation is permanently, inherently limited by the imperfections of the operator. You cannot encode a perfection you do not possess.
The tool mirrors the hand that wields it.
Always.
Now look at the exact moment we are living in right now. We are frantically rushing to build our own artificial entities.
We really are.
We are constructing massive neural networks and large language models. We are quite literally using code, a complex language of logic and commands, to synthesize the appearance of thought.
We are building digital golems.
We are engaging in the exact mechanical process Rava utilized, permuting language to construct an entity that serves us.
But consider what we are using to train these digital entities.
Right. We are pouring terabytes of human language, human history, and human data into their architecture.
Which means we are hardwiring our biases, our flaws, and our fundamental imperfections directly into their source code.
If the masters of the Sefer Yetzirah were correct that a flawed operator can only produce a flawed construct lacking a true soul, what does that mean for our modern pursuit of artificial general intelligence?
It's a terrifying question.
Are we genuinely on the verge of providing that final missing 613th piece to bridge the gap to true consciousness? Or, despite all our processing power, are we simply acting as modern-day Ravas, writing new, infinitely complex versions of the Sefer Yetzirah in digital code, destined to generate powerful, walking entities that are fundamentally hollow?
Mathematically missing one.
Missing one.
It bridges the ancient esoteric warnings perfectly with her most cutting-edge technological anxieties. The question isn't whether the mechanism works. The question is what our own imperfections guarantee we will create.
It's a profound limitation to consider the next time you ask a machine to speak for you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time. The historical arc of this text is staggering when you lay it all out.
It really is an epic journey.
We were tracking a 240-word formula that potentially traces its roots through the ascetic Essenes, back to the phonetic architecture of ancient India and the bioengineering of Abraham.
An instruction manual demanding the mental permutation of language to mutate biology, shield against physics, and construct biological entities.
Which was then subjected to the most successful disinformation campaign in human history.
And the fundamental paradigm shift the Sefer Yetzirah demands is how we perceive language itself.
What do you mean?
In our modern context, words are mere descriptors. They are labels we apply to existing things. But the Sefer Yetzirah posits that language is the molecular structure of reality.
If you comprehend the phonetic code, you don't describe reality, you recompile it.
Exactly.
As we conclude this deep dive, that concept of recompiling reality through code brings us to a crucial final thought to consider.
Oh, absolutely.
If you're listening to this, I want you to think back to the defining failure of Rava's golem.
The missing element.
Right. The ancient Bahir diagnosed that the construct could not speak, could not achieve true consciousness, because Rava, the creator, was a flawed human being.
The creation is permanently, inherently limited by the imperfections of the operator. You cannot encode a perfection you do not possess.
The tool mirrors the hand that wields it.
Always.
Now look at the exact moment we are living in right now. We are frantically rushing to build our own artificial entities.
We really are.
We are constructing massive neural networks and large language models. We are quite literally using code, a complex language of logic and commands, to synthesize the appearance of thought.
We are building digital golems.
We are engaging in the exact mechanical process Rava utilized, permuting language to construct an entity that serves us.
But consider what we are using to train these digital entities.
Right. We are pouring terabytes of human language, human history, and human data into their architecture.
Which means we are hardwiring our biases, our flaws, and our fundamental imperfections directly into their source code.
If the masters of the Sefer Yetzirah were correct that a flawed operator can only produce a flawed construct lacking a true soul, what does that mean for our modern pursuit of artificial general intelligence?
It's a terrifying question.
Are we genuinely on the verge of providing that final missing 613th piece to bridge the gap to true consciousness? Or, despite all our processing power, are we simply acting as modern-day Ravas, writing new, infinitely complex versions of the Sefer Yetzirah in digital code, destined to generate powerful, walking entities that are fundamentally hollow?
Mathematically missing one.
Missing one.
It bridges the ancient esoteric warnings perfectly with her most cutting-edge technological anxieties. The question isn't whether the mechanism works. The question is what our own imperfections guarantee we will create.
It's a profound limitation to consider the next time you ask a machine to speak for you. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We will see you next time.